Money can buy silence. Money can buy loyalty. Money can even buy love, at least, that's what Kim Jae-young believed. He stood inside a luxury hotel room high above Seoul, the city glowing beneath him like it belonged to him. To Kim Jae-young, it did. He was a feared mafia boss, a man whose name opened doors and ended lives. Power clung to him like a second skin. Hannah was in his arms. Her fingers traced slow circles on his chest as soft music filled the room. The scent of expensive perfume hung in the air, sweet and dangerous. Kim Jae-young leaned down, kissed her lips, then whispered into her ear, his voice low and confident. "You're the sweetest girl I've ever met." Hannah smiled, pleased, rubbing her hands against his chest as if claiming him. "You always know how to make a woman feel special," she said. Kim Jae-young smirked. He liked how she looked at him, like a king, not a burden. "I'll be right back," Hannah said softly. 5 minutes. "I need to use the restroom." She walked away, hips swaying, leaving him alone with his thoughts. That was when his phone buzzed. Once. Twice. Again. Kim Jae-young glanced at the screen. Eugene. His wife. Pregnant. Calling again. His jaw tightened. He turned the phone face down without answering. "She'll always be there," he muttered to himself. "They always are." To him, Eugene had become dull. Quiet. Always tired. Pregnancy had changed her, and he hated it. He hated how she no longer laughed easily. Hated how her eyes held questions instead of admiration. Another call came in. Ignored. "Pregnant women are boring," he scoffed, straightening his expensive watch. All emotions, no excitement. He didn't notice the way the room felt colder. Hannah stepped out of the bathroom, smiling, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "Did I miss anything?" she teased. He turned, pulled her close, kissed her deeply. Their eyes locked, smiles shared, bodies pressed together. That night, Kim Jae-young felt untouchable. He didn't know it was the last peaceful night of his life. Thank you for tuning in. If stories filled with power, betrayal, love, and shocking twists move you, take a moment to like this story, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next. This journey is only beginning, and it gets darker from here. They spent the night tangled in silk sheets and whispered lies. Hannah laughed softly as Kim Jae-young promised her things he had no intention of keeping. Outside, Seoul slept, unaware that a storm was already moving. By morning, Kim Jae-young returned to his penthouse. The elevator doors slid open. Silence greeted him. Not the usual quiet tension. This silence felt empty. Wrong. "Eugene," he called, loosening his jacket. No answer. The penthouse felt larger than before, colder than before. His footsteps echoed as he walked inside. Then he saw it. On the glass table sat a diamond wedding ring. Eugene's ring. Beside it lay a folded note. His heart skipped. Slowly, he picked it up and read. "Hope you enjoyed yourself. And I hope you find peace." The words were calm. Too calm. Fear crawled up his spine. Kim Jae-young looked around. Her shoes were gone. Her clothes were gone. Her journals. Her acting scripts. Her sonogram photo. Everything. His hands shook. This isn't a fight," he whispered. "This is goodbye." For the first time in his life, Kim Jae-young, who controlled men, money, and fear, felt powerless. Somewhere out there, Eugene had chosen freedom. And someone had helped her. Kim Jae-young stood frozen in the middle of the penthouse, the goodbye note still clenched in his fist. The city outside his glass walls moved as usual, cars passing, lights blinking, life continuing, but inside, everything had stopped. Eugene was gone. Not stormed out. Not crying. Not begging. Gone. He walked slowly through the living room, his steps heavy, his breath uneven. He opened the closet. Empty. Only hangers remained, lined up neatly like silent witnesses. The drawers where Eugene kept her acting scripts were bare. The shelf that once held her journals, gone. Even the small wooden box where she kept letters from her family in Nigeria had vanished. "She planned this," he said aloud, his voice rough. "She planned everything." A chill ran through him. Eugene had never done anything without thinking it through. She was quiet, observant, Patient. Too patient. And now he understood, she wasn't weak. She had been waiting. Kim Jae-young poured himself a drink. His hand shook as the liquid splashed into the glass. She wouldn't leave alone, he muttered. Someone helped her. The thought hit him hard. Someone had dared to take what belonged to him. He sat on the edge of the leather couch, drinking fast, his mind racing through names. Family? No. Eugene had always kept them far from his world. Friends. He had isolated her carefully over the years. Or so he thought. His chest tightened as another realization settled in. She chose freedom over me. The idea sliced through his pride like a blade. Kim Jae-young had ruled through fear for years. Men bowed. Enemies vanished. Deals were sealed with a nod. Yet the woman he believed would never leave had walked away without shouting, without drama, without asking permission. He slammed the glass onto the table. After everything I gave you, he growled. But the silence answered back. He staggered to the bedroom. The bed was perfectly made. Too perfect. Eugene's side looked untouched, like she had already erased herself before leaving. On the nightstand sat something else, a folded hospital appointment card, torn clean in half. His jaw clenched. She wasn't running blindly. She was protecting her child. That scared him more than anything else. Across town, far away from Seoul's glitter and danger, Eugene sat quietly in the back seat of a car, her hands resting on her growing belly. The road stretched long and dark ahead. Michael Kim drove without speaking. You okay? He asked gently after a moment. Eugene nodded, though her eyes were wet. I didn't think leaving would hurt this much. It always does, Michael said. Even when it's right. She looked out the window, watching the city fade behind them. I kept waiting for him to change, she whispered. I told myself love meant patience. Michael's voice was calm but firm. Love doesn't make you disappear. Those words settled deep in her chest. Back in the penthouse, Kim Jae-young began tearing through drawers, shelves, corners, searching for answers. That's when he noticed something strange. The diary lay open on the cold marble floor, its pages spread like an open wound. Kim Jae-young stared at it, breathing hard, as though the words themselves were stealing air from his lungs. For years, he had believed Eugene was quiet because she had nothing to say. Now he realized the truth was far more dangerous. She had been watching him. He bent down slowly and picked the diary up again, his fingers stiff. Every instinct told him to close it, to stop reading, but something stronger pushed him forward. A need. A fear. A hunger to know how much she had seen. He turned the page. I sit beside him every night and wonder how a man can be so close yet so far away. He smells like another woman, but he looks at me like I'm imagining things. Kim Jae-young's jaw tightened. She was always too sensitive, he muttered, but the words sounded weak, even to him. He flipped to another entry. I followed him today. I don't know why I needed proof. Maybe because silence was killing me faster than truth. His heart skipped. The hotel lobby was bright. Too bright. I saw them laughing. Hannah touched his arm like she belonged there. Kim Jae-young slammed the diary shut. No, he said sharply, pacing the room. You had no right. But the silence answered him again. He opened it once more. I stood outside the hotel room door and felt something inside me finally die. Not love. Hope. His steps slowed. His anger softened into something heavier. She hadn't screamed. She hadn't confronted him. She had simply stopped hoping. Another page. I pretend I don't know. I smile. I cook. I sleep beside him. But I am already gone. Kim Jae-young felt a strange pressure in his chest, tight and unfamiliar. He had faced guns without flinching. He had watched men beg. But these quiet sentences shook him more than violence ever had. She should have said something, he whispered. But deep down, he knew she had. She had said it with her eyes. With her silence. With every night she turned away from him. He dropped onto the couch, the diary still open. Then he saw the name. Michael Kim called today. He listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't tell me to be patient or grateful. He said I deserved more. Kim Jae-young froze. Michael Kim. His former assistant. The man he had pushed out years ago for knowing too much and asking too many questions. The man he thought had left Korea for good. A cold realization crawled up his spine. "Michael," he said slowly. "It was you." Across town, in a quiet apartment far from Seoul's noise, Eugene sat by a window, watching the rain fall. The city felt distant here. Safe. Michael handed her a warm cup of tea. "You don't have to talk," he said gently. "Not tonight." Eugene wrapped both hands around the cup, feeling its warmth. "I didn't think I was brave enough to leave," she said softly. "I thought fear was all I had." Michael shook his head. "Fear doesn't make plans. Strength does." She looked down at her belly, her voice trembling. "I stayed for so long because I didn't want my child to grow up without a father." "And now?" Michael asked. "And now," she said, lifting her eyes, "I don't want my child to grow up watching his mother disappear." Michael nodded, respect clear in his expression. Back in the penthouse, Kim Jae-young stood abruptly, fury returning like fire to dry ground. "She didn't just leave," he said. "She escaped. And worse, she escaped with help." He looked around the empty room again, but this time he didn't see loss. He saw betrayal. Strategy. A move made quietly and cleanly. Eugene hadn't run. She had outplayed him. Kim Jae-young's phone buzzed on the table. An unknown number. One message. "Stop looking for her." His blood ran cold. Someone was protecting Eugene now. And Kim Jae-young realized something that terrified him more than the law, more than his enemies, more than losing power. For the first time, the game was no longer his. Kim Jae-young stared at the message on his phone as if it might disappear if he looked long enough. Stop looking for her. No threat. No explanation. Just certainty. His fingers curled slowly around the phone. "So you've grown bold," he muttered. "Very bold. Only one man would dare send such a message. Michael Kim." The name burned in his mind. Michael had once been his shadow, handling details, fixing problems, asking questions Kim Jae-young didn't like. Questions about money, about shipments, about women. Kim Jae-young had dismissed him easily back then, pushing him out before he became inconvenient. Or so he thought. He paced the penthouse like a caged animal, rage and disbelief mixing in his chest. "You think you can take what's mine and hide her from me?" He laughed, but the sound was empty. Across the city, Eugene stood in front of a mirror in the quiet apartment Michael had arranged. The place was warm, modest, nothing like the cold luxury she had lived in for years. Books on shelves. Soft curtains. A small desk by the window. A space meant for living. She touched her face, studying her own reflection. She looked tired, but lighter. Like someone who had just escaped a long, silent storm. "You don't have to decide everything today," Michael said from the doorway. "This place is yours as long as you need it." Eugene turned to him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Why are you doing this?" Michael hesitated, then answered honestly. "Because I watched him break you. And because no one deserves that." Her throat tightened. "I used to act," she said quietly. "Before him. Before I became invisible." Michael smiled softly. "You don't have to stay invisible." Back at his headquarters, Kim Jae-young called in favors, demanded information, threatened men who once feared him. But every lead went cold. "She vanished," one man said nervously. "Like she planned it." That word again. Planned. His anger shifted into something sharper, paranoia. "She's working with him," Kim Jae-young whispered to himself. "They're working together." He remembered the way Michael had looked at Eugene during events. Respectful. Attentive. Not hungry like other men. That memory made his stomach twist. "You think you're better than me," he growled. Across town, Eugene sat with Michael at the small dining table. He showed her casting calls, old contacts, messages from producers who still remembered her talent. "They asked about you," he said. "They never forgot." Her hands shook as she scrolled. "They still want me?" she asked. Michael nodded. They always did. For the first time in years, Eugene felt something bloom in her chest. Hope. Meanwhile, Kim Jae-young stood before the city skyline, his reflection dark against the glass. He no longer saw a man in control. He saw cracks forming. She chose him, he said bitterly. She chose freedom. And that was unforgivable. He picked up his phone and sent one message. This isn't over. Somewhere far away, Eugene's phone buzzed, but Michael had already turned it off. She doesn't need his fear anymore, he said calmly. Eugene closed her eyes and breathed. For the first time, she wasn't running. She was reclaiming her life. And Kim Jae-young, watching his world slowly shift beyond his control, made a silent promise to himself. If he couldn't own her, he would destroy everything around her. The fall did not come loudly. It came in whispers. Kim Jae-young first felt it in the way his men avoided his eyes. Meetings that once started on time were suddenly delayed. Phones rang longer before anyone answered. Respect, he realized, was slipping through his fingers like smoke. Then the news broke. Government investigators are conducting a full-scale probe into multiple illegal operations linked to Kim Jae-young. The headline flashed across every screen in Seoul. Kim Jae-young stood in his office, staring at the television, his face stiff. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he laughed. They won't find anything, he said calmly. I buried those files years ago. But deep down, a cold truth settled in his stomach. Someone had dug them up. His phone buzzed again and again, calls from lawyers, partners, and board members who suddenly sounded afraid. Sir, one voice said over the phone, trembling, the Financial Crimes Unit is requesting access to our offshore accounts. Kim Jae-young's grip tightened. Denied. They already have partial access, the man continued. Someone gave them details. The room seemed to tilt. Who? Kim Jae-young snapped. There was a pause. Too long. Then the answer came quietly. Hannah. The name hit him harder than any bullet. No, he said sharply. She wouldn't. But even as the word left his mouth, memories rushed in. Hannah asking questions. Hannah touching his tablet. Hannah smiling too sweetly when he spoke about money. Another call came in. The board has called an emergency meeting, his assistant said. They're questioning your leadership. Kim Jae-young ended the call without replying. Across the city, Eugene sat on the couch, one hand resting on her belly as the news played softly in the background. Her heart raced, not with joy, but with disbelief. It's happening, she whispered. Michael sat beside her, his voice calm. I told you the truth would surface. She swallowed. I didn't want revenge. And you didn't take it, Michael replied. You chose safety. Justice is choosing him. Eugene nodded slowly. She thought of the nights she cried silently. The fear she swallowed. The love she buried. Back at headquarters, Kim Jae-young stormed into the boardroom. Anyone who doubts me can leave, he growled. No one moved. The chairman leaned forward. This isn't about doubt. This is about evidence. A thick file slid across the table. Every page felt like a betrayal. Every signature burned. Kim Jae-young flipped through it, his chest tight. You think this ends me? He demanded. The chairman met his gaze. No. Your choices did. Later that night, Kim Jae-young confronted Hannah. She sat across from him, calm, composed. You used me, he said through clenched teeth. Hannah smiled faintly. You taught me how. You promised loyalty. I promised survival, she replied. You were already sinking. I just stepped aside. The words echoed in his head as she walked away. By dawn, the media circled relentlessly. Cameras waited outside his buildings. Former allies released statements distancing themselves from him. Kim Jae-young watched his empire crack. And in that moment, clarity struck him like lightning. Eugene had not been weak. She had been preparing. She had watched, learned, planned. And when the moment came, she chose herself. He slammed his fist against the glass window, rage and regret mixing into something ugly and sharp. She took everything, he whispered. But across the city, Eugene felt something she hadn't felt in years. Relief. She turned to Michael. Do you think he'll stop? Michael shook his head slowly. Men like him never stop trying. But they do run out of power. Eugene looked out the window, the city lights distant and small. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of Kim Jae-young. She was finally free of him. And that terrified him more than losing everything else. Kim Jae-young refused to believe this was the end. Men like him did not fall, they fought. They bought time. They bent the rules until the rules broke. Power had always answered him before, and he was certain it would answer again. He sat in a dark private room, smoke curling toward the ceiling as his lawyer spoke in a low, urgent voice. "The evidence is strong," the lawyer said carefully. "Too strong. Bank transfers, recordings, witness statements. Someone gave them everything." Kim Jae-young's eyes narrowed. "Money fixes everything." The lawyer hesitated. "Not this." That word, "not," felt like an insult. Kim Jae-young stood abruptly. "Then we create confusion. We delay. We bribe." He made calls. Old numbers. Dangerous numbers. Men who once owed him their lives. Doors closed. Voices changed. Fear replaced loyalty. One by one, they refused. By evening, officers appeared at his headquarters with warrants. His men stepped back. No guns. No resistance. Just silence. The king was no longer protected. Across the city, Eugene sat in a hospital room, pale and trembling as pain gripped her body without warning. Her breath came in short gasps as she clutched the bed. "Something's wrong," she whispered. Michael was already at her side. "Stay with me," he said firmly. "Help is coming." Doctors rushed in. Machines beeped. The room filled with tension. "Preterm contractions," a nurse said. "We need to slow this down." Eugene's eyes filled with tears. "It's too early," she cried. "My baby isn't ready." Michael took her hand, steady and warm. "You're not alone. I'm right here." Hours passed in fear and prayer. Medication worked slowly. Pain eased little by little. Finally, a doctor spoke. "The baby is stable. You need strict rest." Eugene exhaled, her body heavy with exhaustion and relief. That same night, Kim Jae-young sat alone in a police interview room, his hands clenched on the table. "You still don't understand," he told the officers calmly. "You need me." One officer looked at him without emotion. "You needed to understand this a long time ago." The words stung. By morning, the headlines changed. Kim Jae-young suspended. Investigation deepens. His name, once feared, was now questioned. In the hospital, Eugene woke to sunlight filtering through the window. Michael sat nearby, asleep in the chair, his jacket still on. She watched him quietly, emotion tightening her chest. He had stayed. When he woke, their eyes met. "You scared me," he said softly. "I scared myself," she replied. He smiled gently. "You're stronger than you think." She believed him now. Elsewhere, Kim Jae-young stared at his reflection in a cold glass wall. No suit. No guards. Just a man facing consequences. For the first time, he understood something terrifying. Power had protected him for years, but it had also blinded him. Eugene didn't destroy him. He destroyed himself. And while she lay in a hospital bed fighting to bring new life into the world, Kim Jae-young realized the cruel truth. He was losing everything. Not because of betrayal, but because he had never learned how to love. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and cold truth. Kim Jae-young stood in the dock, hands clasped, face unreadable. The same man who once controlled fear now waited for judgment like everyone else. No bodyguards. No whispered respect. Just silence. The judge's voice echoed. Charges were read. Evidence was listed. Names of men ruined, businesses crushed, lives damaged, all tied back to him. Kim Jae-young listened without interruption. For the first time, he had nothing to say. Outside, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions he didn't answer. When the guards led him away, the city didn't bow. It moved on. Power, he realized, was loyal only when it was fed. Across the city, Eugene watched the news from the quiet apartment, one hand resting on her belly. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She simply breathed. "It's over," she whispered. Michael stood beside her, steady as always. "For him," he said gently. "Not for you." Eugene nodded. Her body was still weak, but her mind felt clear for the first time in years. The fear that once lived in her chest had finally loosened its grip. Later that day, she sat at the small desk by the window, flipping through audition messages Michael had printed for her. Her name, Eugene, written without Kim Jae-young's shadow attached to it. "They want to see you next month," Michael said. "2 films. A series." Her eyes widened. "You're serious? I wouldn't joke about this." She pressed a hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. "I thought it was over for me." Michael shook his head. It was only paused. That night, Eugene lay awake, listening to the quiet hum of the city. No shouting. No fear. No waiting for a door to open. She placed both hands over her belly. "I promise," she whispered to her unborn child, "you'll never grow up afraid of love." In a cold holding cell miles away, Kim Jae-young stared at the wall, replaying memories he once ignored. Eugene's silence. Her patience. The way she used to wait for him, hopeful. "She didn't betray me," he muttered bitterly. "I betrayed her." The realization came too late to save him, but it came. Days passed. Eugene's health slowly improved. Michael attended every doctor's appointment. He cooked. He listened. He never rushed her. One evening, as they sat together eating quietly, Eugene spoke. "Why didn't you ever leave when you worked for him?" she asked. Michael thought for a moment. "Because I thought staying meant control. I was wrong." She met his eyes. "You saved me." He smiled softly. "You saved yourself. I just opened the door." The bond between them deepened, not rushed, not forced. Built on honesty. On safety. On presence. For the first time, Eugene laughed without fear. She felt alive. One afternoon, she stood by the window, sunlight warming her face. "Michael," she said, turning to him, "I don't feel broken anymore." He smiled. "That's because you aren't." Somewhere behind bars, Kim Jae-young learned what it meant to be alone. No calls. No visitors. No power. Only regret. And across the city, a woman he once believed he owned was rising, stronger, freer, and no longer looking back. The rain had stopped the night Eugene went into labor. It felt symbolic, like the world itself had decided to give her peace. She lay in the hospital bed, breathing slowly, her hands gripping the sheets as pain came in waves. But this time, she wasn't afraid. This time, she wasn't alone. Michael stood beside her, his hand wrapped tightly around hers. "You're doing great," he said softly, his voice steady even though his eyes were filled with worry. "She's almost here." Eugene nodded, tears slipping down her temples, not from fear, but from release. Every push felt like letting go of the past. Every breath felt like a step into a new life. When the baby's cry finally filled the room, sharp and strong, Eugene broke down. "A girl," the doctor announced with a smile. "A healthy baby girl." Michael laughed softly, covering his mouth as emotion hit him hard. Eugene reached out with shaking arms as the nurse placed the baby against her chest. "She's beautiful," Eugene whispered, her voice breaking. The baby's tiny fingers curled instinctively around her mother's skin, as if she already knew she was safe. In that moment, every night of fear, every tear she had swallowed, every moment she felt invisible, none of it owned her anymore. Michael stood close, unable to look away. "She's perfect," he said quietly. Eugene looked up at him, eyes shining. "Thank you for staying." "I wasn't going anywhere," he replied without hesitation. Months passed. Life didn't suddenly become perfect, but it became real. Eugene healed slowly, both in body and in heart. Her daughter grew strong, filling the apartment with soft cries, laughter, and new beginnings. She called Michael Daddy without ever being taught, and each time she did, Eugene watched his eyes soften. Michael never corrected her. He didn't need a title. He earned it with presence. Eugene returned to acting. At first, she was nervous, standing in front of cameras again, feeling exposed. But once the director called action, something awakened inside her. The woman she had buried for years stepped forward. Offers followed. Interviews. Roles. Applause. This time, success didn't feel like escape. It felt like home. One evening, Eugene sat on the balcony, watching her daughter sleep in Michael's arms. The city lights glowed softly around them, no longer threatening, just beautiful. "Michael," she said quietly. He looked up. "Yeah." I've been afraid to say this, she admitted. Because I don't want to ruin what we have. He stood, holding the baby carefully, and stepped closer. Say it anyway. She took a breath. I love you. The words hung in the air, gentle, honest, unforced. Michael smiled, emotion clear in his eyes. I've loved you for a long time, he said. I just wanted you to feel safe first. Tears slipped down Eugene's face, but this time they were warm. They stood there together, no power games, no fear, no control. Just two people who chose each other after surviving the worst. Far away, in a place without luxury or applause, Kim Jae-young sat alone, staring at concrete walls. His empire was gone. His name meant nothing. For the first time, he understood the cost of believing people were possessions. And for the first time, he had no one to blame but himself. Back in the city, Eugene laughed as Michael lifted her daughter into the air, her tiny giggles filling the room. This was her victory. Not revenge. Not destruction. But freedom. Love found after pain. A life rebuilt on truth. And as Eugene watched the two people she loved most, she knew something deep and certain. Sometimes, losing everything is the only way to finally gain yourself.